Have you ever felt like your job title, your past mistakes, or the opinions of others are the only thing that define you? Well, I'm going to give you 5 critical points about remembering whose you are. Maybe you're wondering why a harsh word or a conflict at work hits you so deeply, why it sometimes shakes your confidence and self worth. If you have ever struggled with feeling like you're not enough because of what you do or what others say, well, then you're not alone. Imagine for a moment, what if all those labels, like success or failure, popular or unwanted, didn't have the final say over your identity? What if there's a way to find real freedom from the pressure to measure up and the sting of criticism? In today's episode, we're exploring how your true identity can break the cycle of shame and pride and set you free from the labels that hold you back. Over the next few minutes, we'll look at how our culture shapes the way we see ourselves, why conflict can rattle our self worth, and most importantly, how discovering your identity in Christ can transform the way you handle criticism, conflict, and even your own mistakes. If you're ready for a fresh perspective, one that could change everything, well, stick around. See, the first point is that we often succumb to our worldly identity. Our culture shapes our identity. In today's world, so much of our value seems to come from what we do, our job titles, our achievements, even our failures. Maybe you've noticed this in your own life. When you meet someone new, one of the first questions we often ask is, so what do you do? It's almost as if our worth is measured by our resume or our LinkedIn profile. But it goes deeper than that. When we make a mistake at work, or if we receive criticism from a boss, a friend, or even a family member, it's easy to let that one moment define us. Suddenly, we're not just someone who made a mistake. We start to believe that we are the mistake, or that are just not good enough. These labels of failure, underachiever, or not meeting expectations, they cling to us and they shape the way we see ourselves. Now, think about how that plays out in conflict. Maybe you're in a meeting and someone calls out your idea or makes a harsh comment. Even if it's just a passing remark, it can hit hard. You might feel embarrassed, defensive, or even angry. Sometimes that one moment sticks with us for hours or days as we replay it in our mind. Why? Because when our identity is tied to what we do, criticism feels like a personal attack. It threatens our self worth. And it's not just at work, this can happen in our families, our friendships, and even in church or social circles. When living out those labels, good enough or not good enough, successful or failure, it's exhausting. We find ourselves trying to prove our worth to avoid situations where we might be exposed or embarrassed. We may even hold grudges or withdraw from relationships, all because we're protecting a fragile self identity built on what we do rather than who we truly are. But here's the good news, there is a different way, a way to break free from those labels and find security that doesn't rise and fall on our every success or failure. And that's exactly what we're about to explore. Point number 2 is that we have a new identity in Christ. Let's take a moment to dig deeper into this life changing idea. In Christ, you are not defined by your resume or your reputation or your regrets. The Bible teaches that when you put your faith in Jesus, God doesn't just improve our old identity, He gives us a brand new one. You are now called a child of God, a beloved son or daughter, a disciple, and even an ambassador for Christ. That means you represent Him wherever you go, and not because of your performance, but because of what He has done for you. That's your new identity. It is secure no matter what happens at work, school, or home. Think about that for a second. If you fail a test, lose a job, or make a mistake, those moments don't get the final word over who you are. Instead, your value and worth comes from God Himself, who knows you fully and loves you completely. Imagine waking up each day knowing your worth is settled, not because you checked off everything on your to do list, but because God has already called you His own. Why does this matter? Well, because when you know who you are in Christ, you're free from the constant pressure to prove yourself. You don't have to earn your place at the table. You are already accepted and already treasured and already secure. That changes everything, especially when life gets tough or people criticize you. Instead of letting their words stick to you, you can remember what God says about you and stand firm in his promises. Maybe you're wondering, how do I actually live out this new identity? Well, it starts with believing what God says is true about you and reminding yourself daily of this new position. The more you root your sense of self in who you are in Christ, the less power those old labels and wounds will have over you. We'll see how this new identity reshapes the way you handle conflict and criticism and how this can bring real freedom and peace to your relationships. Well, hi, I'm Dwight Shetler, and I serve as President of Ambassadors of Reconciliation. I'm really glad that you're joining me as we continue this important conversation about identity and conflict. If you want to learn more or dig deeper into these ideas, be sure to check out the link below in the description to our blog, where you can find additional insights and practical resources. Well, that brings us to point number 3, how our identity in Christ shapes the way we respond to conflict. When we're grounded in who we are in Christ, conflict doesn't have to rattle us or define us. Instead, we have a foundation that allows us to respond with clarity, grace, and peace, even when things get messy or emotions run high. Think about it. If my worth and security come from being God's beloved child, then criticism or disagreement won't threaten my sense of value. That truth gives me the freedom to listen without defensiveness, to admit when I am wrong, and to seek understanding rather than trying to win. It also helps me extend grace to others, remembering that they too are made in God's image and may be struggling with their own insecurities. See, conflict is inevitable, whether at home, at work, or in our communities. But when our identity is rooted in Christ, we're less likely to react out of fear, pride, or self protection. Instead, we can approach tough conversations with humility, compassion, aiming for reconciliation rather than division. We become ambassadors, representative of Christ's peace and love, even in difficult situations. So, if you face conflict this week, I encourage you to pause and remind yourself of whose you are in Christ. You're God's precious child. Let that truth guide your words, your actions, and your attitude. And remember, you're never alone in this journey. For more encouragement and practical tips, check out the blog in the description below. Point number 4 is about what it really looks like to live out your God-given identity in everyday life. Maybe you're wondering, how do I actually walk this out, especially when things get tough? Well, it starts with making a conscious choice each day to see yourself and others through God's eyes. Think about those moments when conflict arises, whether it's a disagreement with a family member, a tough conversation at work, or even a misunderstanding with a friend. It's easy to fall back on old patterns, getting defensive, holding grudges, or letting insecurity take over. But when you remember who you are in Christ, you have the freedom to respond differently. First, practice forgiveness. That doesn't mean just ignoring the hurt or pretending everything's okay. It means releasing others from the debt of their mistakes, just as God has forgiven you. Forgiveness breaks the cycle of bitterness and opens the door to healing, not just for them, but for you too. Next, choose humility. When your worth is secure in Christ, you don't have to protect your ego or prove yourself right. Humility allows you to admit when you're wrong, to listen deeply, and to learn from others. It's about putting reconciliation above winning the argument. And finally, show compassion. Remind yourself that every person you meet is made in God's image and may be going through struggles you can't see. Let your words and actions reflect the love and grace that you have received, especially in tense situations. Living out your true identity isn't always easy, but it's powerful. When you root yourself in Christ's love, you can handle conflict and criticism with clarity, grace, and peace. And you become a source of hope and healing in your relationships, and you reflect God's heart in the world around you. So this week, as you face challenges and disagreements, pause and remember whose you are. Ask God to help you see yourself and others through his eyes, and let that truth shape your response. And remember, this journey isn't one you walk alone. And point 5 is to keep growing. In this next video, you'll learn who you are by nature and how that impacts reconciliation. So click this video to continue learning and subscribe to stay on the journey.